So, this story happened on July 8th, 2020. Me and my dad have decided that we will go shooting at a nearby range. We have a gas pistol, which in our country you don't need a license to have. Now, this pistol can only shoot blank or gas cartridges, but we also have a special attachment to the barrel that allows us to shoot a flare, pyro, etc. So we went there, shot a few pyros and flares, and then when I just loaded a new flare, about 20 feet away from us appeared our entitled lady and her humble kid. The kid looked like 11, and the Karen was about 40. So they approach us from the back, and I hear the typical, "Excuse me," and I just tell myself in the head, "Oh God, it's happening." The conversation follows. "Yes, could you please let my kid shoot?" Now we have some restrictions about guns. 1, you must be at least 15 to shoot the gun. 2, for you to be able to shoot the explosives from the gun, you must have paperwork, which my dad has. "I'm sorry, but I can't let him shoot. He's too young for that." "No, he's not. He is 17. Mom, let them go. We will rent one right there." "And do you even have the paperwork to shoot explosives from it?" "No, but you do, right?" Dad rolls his eyes at this. Karen gets angry and yells, "Just give me the gun." "No, and you don't even have the paperwork." "Fine. I'll take it myself." She grabs the gun from my hand and pulls the trigger. The flare went off right on my t-shirt. I put the fire down and shout for security. When Karen realizes what she did, she grabs the flare box and bolts from the range going to the forest. Her kid just stands there frozen. Then comes the security guard. He asks me, "Are you okay?" "Yeah, just the shirt is a bit ashed." "Where did she go?" "Into the forest." Well, this range has to our pleasure a kennel. There are 2 dogs which are trained to find guns and people. This is because the people have been trying to sneak out with guns or ammo. My dad is an off-duty officer, so he gets the dog and the security guard and they go to find her. Her kid and I go behind them. After about 15 minutes of searching, the security guard spots her hiding in a bush. "Look, she is right there." He unleashes the dog and it runs to the bush where Karen is. And just before the bush, Karen raises and shouts, "Stay away, you jerk." And she shoots the dog. The dog howled in pain as the explosive pyro exploded in its face. The security guard yells, "Hands up!" Karen is right then tackled to the ground, apprehended, and later charged for assault, stealing, and injuring a police dog. At the court, she gets a total of 15 years in prison. Me and my dad then returned home, grabbed an air gun, and we went shooting tin cans until it was evening. And that's the end. I was reading a story recently that reminded me of this incident, so I thought I'd share. This happened about 12 years ago. A close friend and I were at a local movie store. Not a Best Buy or Blockbuster type, but a small local business that's awesome. It was summer and it was super hot. Anyone who's been in the desert area of the southwestern United States knows summers are hot. My friend and I went to this place with a family friend. Now a bit of backstory about the family friend. She's a World War II Marine nurse who also served in Korea and Vietnam, was severely wounded in Vietnam, had the bottom half of both shins blown off by an IAD-type bomb. That destroyed the vehicle she was in, sent her flying 60-something feet, and lodged a heavy piece of shrapnel in her spine and almost cut her in half. As I said, it was hot out, 97 degrees or so Fahrenheit. So even with the windows open in a car, you were still sweating. As my friend and I were walking in, the family friend had gone in ahead as the heat doesn't help her heart. She's got a heart condition. We saw a kid, probably no more than 4 and no younger than 2 years, sitting in a car seat, in a car with all the windows up, 1 or 2 inch gaps in the back too, and the car off. The kid looked like he'd been there a while. My friend went back to our truck, grabbed a 2x4 out the back and smashed the window. We didn't think there was time to try and find the mom as there were a few stores around and no time to check them. We pulled the kid from the car and rushed him inside the video store. The owner, a friend, told us to grab a cold soda out of the fridge and give it to the kid. The family friend was checking on the kid when we heard a banshee-like scream behind us. The following dialogue ensued. "What the heck did you 2 do to my car?" "You're the mom." "We were trying to." I was answering her, but of course she cut me off before hearing what happened. "Why the heck did you break my window? You 2 little jerks will pay for my car repair." Side note, the car was already falling apart and looked like it was ready for the scrap heap anyway. "We ain't paying for nothing. We saved your kid from a heat stroke." "You're welcome," my friend told her. "He's fine. You 2 need to pay for the damage you did my car and pay for my videos." She had a stack of about 7 DVDs from different shows, mostly adult and 1 kid movie. "Are you stupid? They just saved your child. Be grateful you're not being arrested for homicide," the family friend told her. Side note, this family has a thick Irish accent, even though she grew up here in the U.S. Karen stares at her blankly, then says the classic Karen phrase, "We're in America. Speak proper English." "And you go screw yourself," she told her back. The conversation goes back and forth as Karen tries to, and does poorly, to defend her actions. and why me and my friend need to pay for her crap. The family friend basically told her in no uncertain terms to go away before the cops arrived. Needless to say, cops were called. They took Karen away, and the kid ended up with his dad. Okay, so this was a story that happened a year ago, right around when the pandemic started. Here is the cast. So the entitled mom will be called Catherine here because my aunt and an old friend of mine are called Karen, and they're the nicest people you could know. So on March 8, 2020, my dad and I were waiting in line at a store, and I had a mini chocolate cake with me, along with some candles and sprinkles. I hadn't celebrated my birthday in 2 years, and this would make year 3 as my whole family canceled on me due to the pandemic, which I get. But since I hadn't had a good birthday celebration in some time, my dad decided it would be a let's eat cake and watch movies tonight kind of birthday. I had put my cake on the conveyor belt, along with my other items, before putting my headphones in while I wait in the line with my dad. I was halfway jamming out to my music when I felt a tap on my shoulder. I look at behind me only to see a woman looking at me before smiling. She wasn't wearing a mask at this time because they weren't required, but my dad and I still were, as it is better to be safe than sorry. I take out my headphones and just stare at her. She had shoulder-length dirty blonde hair, a pink shirt that barely reaches her belly button, and a pair of thigh-high shorts. Where I live, it's always sunny, so those outfits are pretty normal. She was maybe 34 or 35 from the looks of it. She had a child with her, maybe 10 years old. He also wasn't wearing a mask, but he was a pretty sweet kid. He was actually really quiet and not entitled like his mother. "Hello, ma'am," I said, kind of nervous. I have suffered with anxiety for a while, so talking to people I don't know can make me get nervous. "Hey, kid, can I ask you where you got that?" she says, looking in the direction of the conveyor belt. "Got what?" I look in that direction. "That," she says, pointing at my cake. "Oh, you mean my cake? I got that in the back of the store where all the other baked goods and the bread are." "I hope that helps, ma'am." Without even a thank you, the woman ran off, leaving her kid at their cart right behind me. He just looked at me and smiled. "I like your purple hair, miss." I remember just seeing my little brother and smiling to myself before responding, "I like your car's t-shirt. It's pretty cool." After that, my dad and I had just shared a glance about what the woman did, and I just shrugged. After around 3 minutes, my dad and I make it to the front of the line, and my dad realizes he left his wallet in the car. Since we were parked close to the store, the cashier let my dad run out to the car to get his wallet. Right after he left, I heard a scream. I and everyone else turned their heads to see the woman I'd talked to earlier. "This brat stole my cake," she yells, pointing at me. "What? No, Yes, you did, you brat." She didn't even let me finish my sentence. "You stole my cake. Then you were very rude to me when I asked for it back." The manager walks around the conveyor belt and stands next to the cashier and looks at me. "Is this true, miss? Did you take her cake?" "No, I didn't. Today is my birthday, and my dad and I were just getting me a small cake." Karen, who is now back in line with her kid, "That's not true. I told you it was my kid's birthday, and you just got mad at me and took my cake." I was close to tears at this point, "Ma'am. Stop lying. Please, I already told you that this was my cake." As the woman started to yell at me, the manager and even the cashier about how I was lying, I heard someone walk behind me. I could see it was my dad. I remember hugging him tightly before he put his hand on my shoulders and asking me what happened. I just pointed at the yelling woman, and he nodded before getting in front of me and looking at the woman. "May I ask why you are screaming at my daughter?" my dad asked. "She stole my child's birthday cake. Now get out of my way and let me talk to the little witch." "Ma'am, let me ask you this. If this is your cake, why do my daughter and I have the candles and sprinkles? Well, you only have a magazine, a bag of chips, and a soda on your part of the conveyor belt." While this logic didn't make the best sense, the woman went quiet. The manager looks at my dad and me and goes to talk when we all hear a little voice. "That's her cake," Karen's little son says with a smile. All of us look at him, and honestly, I thought that he was saying it was his mother's cake. "Whose cake is it, kiddo?" the manager asks, looking down at the 10-year-old. "The girl with the purple hair." He pointed at me before going to the conveyor belt. He stood as tall as he could before pushing the cake towards me and my dad. "What?" Karen screamed. Also, if you don't believe me, my daughter or the kid, there are cameras all around this store. If the woman was quiet before, she was extra quiet now, and her face was turning white. We paid for the cake, candles, and sprinkles. Then on the way out of the store, I could hear the woman yelling about how she wanted a free cake for all of the nonsense she had to deal with today because of that entitled brat and her father. My dad and I just laughed and left the store. Before we left, I turned around and saw the small kid waving at me as his mother kept yelling, louder and louder. I waved back at him as my dad and I left. Around a month later, my dad and I had come back, masked up and hand sanitized again, just coming for groceries. I met up with some workers who were friends I knew in high school. We started talking and the lady topic came up. They looked at me and laughed. "Wait, that entitled brat was you." I just nodded and looked at them. curious as to why they were laughing. Through laughs, my friend says how the woman knocked down the magazine and lollipop stands by the cash register, along with cussing out the manager and the cashier. She ended up getting a temporary ban from the store. I had also found out that my dad and I got the last mini cake that day. We both had a laugh. Then I had to say goodbye, and I caught up with my dad so we could leave the store soon. To be honest, I just remembered this story because it's almost March 8 again. This happened about 8 months ago. I don't browse Reddit often, but I came across this subreddit recently and remembered this encounter. So first off, I speak a couple languages. Chinese isn't one of them, but I randomly got a text to my cell in Chinese. It roughly translated to, according to phone translation, "Hello, is this it's a restaurant name? Our company will have a dinner next weekend. I want to book a private room for 8 to 10 people a few days in advance. Please help me arrange it." Now, the message was pretty polite, so after I figured out what they wanted, I replied telling them they had the wrong number. They apologized for the misunderstanding. Now comes the reason why it's on this sub. About 6 hours later, I get an angry text from the same number, now in broken English, saying that they checked the number 3 times and, yeah, they did have the right number. I tried telling them multiple times they had the wrong place, but they were very insistent. Eventually, I decided to give in. I informed them that we had an opening at 5 p.m. on the day they wanted. I was hoping they'd show up, learn they don't have a reservation who makes restaurant reservations over text anyways, and be embarrassed in front of their boss. In hindsight, I probably just made trouble for the restaurant, but this guy was blowing up my phone, and I text so rarely it didn't even cross my mind to block the number until a coworker asked why I didn't do that when I told her the story on break. After the initial conversation, I looked up the restaurant they wanted. It was in my state, but it was on the complete other side of the state. I also saw the number for the restaurant, which wasn't my number, but after they got upset, I couldn't be bothered to give it to them. Edit. I've been reading all your stories in the comments. I gotten a laugh out of a few of them. But to clarify, I looked up this place online, and none of the digits in the phone numbers even match. Even the area code is different. The text was addressed to Boss Chen, so maybe they thought they were texting the owner and not the restaurant? To reply to some of the comments I've seen. As for why I even engaged with them, they were initially polite and I was trying to be helpful. I don't think it was a scam, or if it was, I have no idea what they were trying to get out of it. So me, 19, male, and my, now ex, girlfriend, 18, female, have been together for more than a year. We were in the same class during middle school and high school now. A 2-year friendship eventually evolved into a relationship. You all know how it is. We were happily together, at least so I thought, since December 2019. I thought everything was great between us the whole time. Although recently, about March, I noticed her becoming very distant and barely writing first, dry texting, etc. I asked her multiple times if everything is okay and gave her some space, but it continued for the next few months. I was naturally very upset as I've been through hell and back together with her when she was going through depression and a really hard time at the end of 2020. It suddenly felt like all this time was wasted and worth nothing. I, as a naive high schooler, truly believed that she was the one. It was serious after all. We matched perfectly together. We spent about 3 full months crying together at night when she was going through a rough time. We had similar plans for the future, similar interests, and it seemed we were meant for each other. My girlfriend, let's call her Caroline, was studying to become a lawyer, so she was mostly into humanities subjects. I, on the other hand, am studying biochemistry for medical school. I apologize if this is all confusing different. We live in Europe. She was required to attend at least one science subject to graduate: physics, biology, chemistry, psychology. She always hated these subjects and just took them because they were necessary to graduate. She ended up picking chemistry as I was a natural and tutored 9Y10 graders chemistry in my free time, and I always helped her with assignments, etc. It started as helping her before exams and assignments so she could get a good pass grade and after her rough time. Warped into me writing half of the assignments for her. In February, she started to do everything with me again, though. We had online the whole time. Anyways, enough backstory. After noticing Caroline started to get distant, and she never properly answered my questions regarding her behavior, I wanted to see how far it would go. For 1 week, I didn't invite her, call her, text her first. In a total of 1 week, she called me 3 times. Twice to ask me about her assignment and once telling me how she felt insecure and bad. I'm not a jerk. I helped her out with her school stuff and comforted her when she felt down. Me being the naive, love is perfect's lovebird I am, chalked it up to her feeling depressed again, but feeling embarrassed about it. I continued helping and comforting her for the next month until nothing changed and she never opened up. I was honestly doubting everything by then. Is me? What am I doing wrong? Etc. I tried everything I could eventually. I asked her friends if something happened, but they said she was the same as always towards them. I knew something was up, but I didn't know what it was yet. One day when she came over to my place, it was only the second time she did that in March. Usually she came at least twice a week. We were sitting in my room and talking while she was trying out Valorant. After she went to my kitchen to make herself something, I heard a notification from her phone. I'm usually not a snooper, but I had a quick look at her screen that lit up. I wouldn't be able to read the message or who it was anyway. It was a Discord notification. I was very surprised. I knew for a fact that she didn't have it a month ago. Plus, she only plays Minecraft once in a while. She never uses Discord or anything. So the next morning I did some snooping, and sure enough, I found a whole other Instagram account of hers where she branded herself to be an aesthetic gamer girl. Not that there's anything wrong with that. She had never told me anything about this. I couldn't find any of her friends following her on that account either. Sure enough, she had her Discord username in her bio, curious, and to be honest, Jerk-Me decided it would be a good idea to create a throwaway account and try to text her to see what she was all about. Before you complain to me, I know I was a jerk here. After texting her on my new account, we talked for a bit until she became flirty. We played a few Bed Wars games together, once again on a throwaway account I bought for $1. I kind of broke down and started questioning my sanity. I had been with her all this time and through so much stuff, I couldn't believe she would do this to me. After the sadness came from the anger, I wanted to know how much she took it. I found it hard to believe that she would just casually flirt with guys like this. After setting up my first recon mission plan, I found out more about her until I found out about her supposed boyfriend. At that point, I had a huge emotional breakdown, and I felt I've wasted so much time helping someone who would betray me like this. From her stories, I would later find out they had been dating for a whole month by now, about when her behavior started to change. At this point, I started hatching my revenge plan. I know I would not let her off the hook this easily. I spent 2 weeks pulling all-nighters making sure I had all my work done till the end of the year, until graduation. I spent all my remaining time creating fake chemistry textbook pages so I could make my pro-revenge more believable. All of the information was wrong. I knew I had to give her a taste of her own medicine, betray her like she had me. For the remaining 2 months of the school year, I fed her all this fake information and made sure she got all of her assignments wrong. I knew she wouldn't be able to tell anyone she was copying off me, as our high school had a very, very, very strict rule for plagiarism. As much as 3 small cheating attempts on small exams could get you expelled. So after letting the pot stew for those 2 painful, awful months, I let the crap hit the fan. As our teacher had to handle an outrageous amount of classes, she always checked our assignments late, often by 2 or 3 months all at once. I knew I could use this fact to my advantage. After she submitted her final assignments that were worth a huge percentage of our final graduation grade, I told her I knew about her shenanigans had been still ongoing for 3 entire months by now. I told her how she hurt me and how it will come back to haunt her. I made sure of that. She mostly brushed me off and acted as if I were the villain, as I couldn't just leave her and that she was only friends with that guy. Although I told her something was going to happen, I never told her what it would be. Trust me, she never saw it coming. 1 week later, the end-of-year results rolled around. When we received our final grades, I was over the moon as I passed with flying colors on the other hand, or not so much. Due to her final assignments and all quarter 4 work equaling to an F, she called me crying and asked for help. She told me she wouldn't be able to graduate if she wouldn't receive at least a passing grade for this year. She told me our teacher gave her a final chance after telling her how disappointed she was. Caroline has two more months at school with extra one-on-one online lessons with our Saint teacher. Honestly, props go out to her. To be honest, I felt really bad for her in her situation, knowing very well that if she didn't work hard in these 2 months in a subject she hated, she would have to repeat the last year without someone constantly helping her with her chemistry. That compassion quickly went away, and I told her I would help her, but only if she apologized and paid me my regular tutoring fees. Caroline went full-on ballistic after that and screamed at me how I could do this to her. I hung up, and she called me a few seconds after, apologizing and agreeing to pay me for my help. She now has 2 months of intense memorizing with her ex if she wants to graduate. Edit. Now she has to study for those 2 months. And when the regular end of the school year comes, she has to complete a series of exams, think 4-8, covering the most important topics from this year. If she passes all of them, she will pass chemistry. So there's a local game shop that I play at, with around a dozen regulars who all play a variety of games together, one of whom we'll call Obnoxious Rules Lawyer. Obnoxious Lawyer is extremely into a particular tabletop combat game, which we play every Wednesday at his insistence. I am neither as good at it nor as into it as he is. This guy knows all the rules, all the corner cases, has a massive collection, and will niggle out every single advantage on every turn in every way he can think of. I continue to play for a number of reasons, primarily that he plays in some of the other games I do like, and I want to maintain the social dynamic as much as possible. And also there's free food, but this game is not fun for me, not the slow, drawn-out way he forces us to play it anyway. To give a little bit of context, the game takes place on a table about 3 feet by 6 feet with a variety of terrain features that are changed every week by the store manager, game coordinator, activities director. We'll call him director, because why not? Each game can take hours and involves dozens or hundreds of miniatures. There are several different types of units, things like infantry, heavies, think tanks, commanders and specials or spellcasters. You win when you eliminate your opponent's forces or achieve a specific objective. We usually play to elimination. Now, or routinely beats me with 30 to 50% of his own forces remaining, and is always quite smug about it. I let him have these victories because he plays in my other games, and it keeps him happy / keeps him for exercising his rules lawyer tendencies and those too much. Last week, however, was a particularly bad game for me. He won with about 70% of his forces remaining. After my last units were destroyed, I said good game and reached out to shake his hand. He literally crossed his arms across his chest, smirked at me and said, Good. Just like that, pronounced how I spelled it with that massive condescending smirk on his face. Now, reveling or taking pride in your victories in one thing, that's totally fine. But refusing to shake my hand and antagonizing me, like that was not something I was going to stand for. Here's where the malicious compliance comes in. When he said that, what he meant was become better at the standard, conventional methods of battle, learn new strategies and how to employ them appropriately, and, importantly, buy more powerful units to play with. I could do that, but I wasn't going to. Instead, I did about 5 minutes of research online. I quickly found a strategy universally reviled for how cheesy and unfair it is. It's extremely easy to beat if you know it's coming, but if you're not prepared, it can totally wreck you. Typically, you build your armies with a mix of unit types. You might use, oversimplified, 25% infantry, 50% tanks, 20% specials, and 5% commanders. However, this is not required. The only requirement is that you must have at least one commander. I built my army for yesterday with 95% specials and one commander. I only had 5 of the specific special unit I wanted to use, so I went in on Monday to buy 14 more. While I was there, I mentioned to Director that we've been playing this game on a lot of open maps lately. Wouldn't it be nice if we played on a map with some cover? Maybe some caves? Well, he just sold me these minutes, so he knew what was up. He said, you're right. The maps have been pretty similar lately, and grinned at me. It's worth pointing out I'm not the only one whose nerves obnoxious lawyer gets on, and Director was there last week and saw how obnoxious lawyer had been acting towards the other customers. This matters because when I got to the shop yesterday, I saw that he had gone above and beyond when it came to setting up the new map table. The table is oriented long ways north to south. Obnoxious lawyer always sit on the north end of the table, near the wall. It's his spot, don't ask me why. The table was laid out with about 20% of the north end covered with caves, about 30% of the middle flat open area, and about 50% of the south end, absolutely riddled with caves. Obnoxious lawyer had arrived before I did and had all of his stuff on chairs and tables around the north end of the gaming table as usual. We're about to start and Director says we're going to have an asymmetric battle today. I'll flip a coin to decide who's on which end of the table. Obnoxious lawyer immediately says, "Screw you, I'm sitting here." Director just nods and says, "All right." He then asks obnoxious lawyer, "Do you want to hide any of your units in those caves? I'll make Jaitan leave so he doesn't know where your units are." Now, this isn't typically done, but Director said it with such a straight face it was really convincing. Obnoxious lawyer looks at him like he's an idiot and says no, then starts setting up in the middle of the open area, preparing to charge in and overrun my units. Realizing what Director has planned, I just wait while he sets up. Director turns to me and asks me the same thing. I say, "Actually, yeah, that sounds like it could be fun." So Director makes obnoxious lawyer go into the other room, and I hide my surprise in the cave complexes Director has so thoughtfully set out for me. Normally, this would be a problem because almost all units have a range statistic. They can't shoot at anything outside of that range, requiring you to actually engage the enemy if you want to win. The specials I selected were very special in that regard. They're small, slow, fragile, easy to trap, and easy to kill, and they only have one attack. Unfortunately for obnoxious lawyer, that attack is, essentially, orbital bombardment. It can target anywhere on the map. Director calls lawyer back in after less than a minute. It doesn't take long to set up 20 minutes, and obnoxious lawyer is visibly confused. Obnoxious lawyer, "You're done? Where are all your units?" Me, in the caves. Obnoxious lawyer, "So what? You're just not going to attack?" Me, "I'll attack, don't worry." Director, "Or since you won last week, Jaitan goes first." Obnoxious lawyer, sarcastically rolling his eyes. "I know." Director, "Jaitan, me. I cast orbital bombardment 19 times. Director, nods. Roll for damage. Obnoxious lawyer, "What?" Long story short, obnoxious lawyer can't counterattack because he doesn't know where my freaking units are. He loses about 60% of his forces in the first 5 minutes. He's frantically scrambling to flush me out with some units and find cover with others. He honestly could have won if he'd played really well, which had me worried when I started to realize the fact, but then the best part happens. He rage quits. Lots of yelling, lots of accusations of cheating against me and director. I don't really remember all of it that well. It was pretty frantic, but the best part I do remember is him asking me, "What do you think you're doing?" I got good. About a year ago, I was in the midst of a divorce. We were trying to be amicable about it. Due to financial reasons, we had decided to remain living in the same household during the divorce process. Not recommended at all. I was planning on moving after we had paid off a couple of bills. We had agreed to live separate lives/separate bedrooms while under the same roof, but had one rule for each other. Do not bring a date over and have sex with them in the house. I thought it was just common courtesy during an uncommon living situation. During the summer, we had a large storm that knocked out the power to most of our area. A massive heat wave, 95 plus female, followed. We were lucky as we still had our electricity during this time. My soon-to-be ex-husband had just started dating someone new. She had no power and was sweltering in the heat wave. In an attempt to be nice and to show that no hard feelings were abound, I told the ex that if she was dying, he could have her over to enjoy some glorious air conditioning. A small point for clarity. I work nights, thus I sleep during the day. I woke up one afternoon to find the ex and new girl pulling up in the driveway with an overnight bag in hand. Okay, I guess she's spending the night too, I thought. No matter, I had to go to work that night. The ex was horrified that I was home and awake. What did he expect? The new girl was rude when I introduced myself. I gave her the benefit of the doubt because, hey, the ex-wife is there in her pajamas. They went upstairs and I went downstairs to give them some space, remembering our rule of no sex. Oh, how naive and stupid I was. We didn't really speak to each other for the rest of the awkward evening, and I went on my merry way to work. They were gone when I got home in the morning. A little time went by. She didn't stop over again, but they were still seeing each other. I really didn't care one way or the other. I was happy that he seemed happier, but that was about it. One night before I had to go to work, the ex was sloppy drunk. He confessed that he had slept with new girl while I was home that night. I saw red. I'm not much of a yelling, screaming type of gal, but I let loose. He apologized. I went to work and started to scheme. He was at work when I got home that morning. I went up to his bedroom and threw back his blankets and sheets. I bounced on the bed for a while and rolled around and messed everything up. I stashed the condom wrapper in the blankets and half-assed, made the bed again. We didn't see each other that day, and again, I went to work that night. I got home the next morning and his car was still in the garage. Oh, he was supposed to be at work. I go in the house, and he's still in his bedroom. Oh no. He called down to me and asked me to come upstairs. He was still in bed and looked like he had been crying. He asked if I had had sex in his bed. I tried to look innocent, also known as not laugh, and said I had no idea what he was talking about. He stated that he had found his bed messed up, a condom wrapper in the blankets, and a used condom in the trash. After a while, I couldn't hold it in anymore and told him the truth. I had staged the whole thing for revenge. He broke the rule of no sex in the house. The most beautiful thing of all, he didn't believe me. Part of our problems that led to our divorce was that he was incredibly jealous/controlling, always thought I was cheating on him, etc. He then stated that he had his first therapy session scheduled for later that afternoon. Even better. A few weeks later, he told me that new girl had broken up with him because of his issues and baggage.